Hello, hello, and welcome back to the show. So we are still going through the human design profiles, and well, actually, we went through the last few weeks, generators, projectors, reflectors, manifesting generators, and this week we're doing it a little different. I'm talking about manifestors, and I have my partner in crime, Danielle, coming on. So the last few weeks we've interviewed those particular people who could give us some feedback. But this week, things turned out a little different. So we're just going with it. So it's going to be kind of a Q&A, detailed description of what to expect and even the authorities of manifestors. And we'll talk about those three. So you can kind of, if you are a manifestor, you can kind of see how that relates to you. Danielle and I have been doing a human design YouTube show. So it's kind of like a mix between More Than Mindset, and we are showing up live on Thursdays on my YouTube channel. And so you can catch us there talking about communication, relationships, business, living by your strategy and authority in your life. And we always bring in cosmology, planetary alignment, and a little bit of human design and gene keys. So Danielle, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone. Well, thanks so much, Kim, for inviting me on the show today. It's really exciting to talk about manifestors, and I think this will be a really important call if you're a manifestor or not, because it's really important for us to not only support the manifestors, but for manifestors to be in their proper alignment. They're only about 8 to 10% of the population. Most of the world, other than manifestors, are designed to pretty much almost like respond to things coming from outside of them, whereas manifestors operate completely different. So I think it'll be fun to get into some interesting details about how to support them, or if you are a manifestor, how to really embrace your strategy of informing and what that means in regards to eliminating resistance and creating more peace in your life. So yeah, there's a lot that we could talk about. I know, Kim, you want to keep this short, but we could do like mini videos just on this. So yeah, where do we want to start? Do we want to talk about the aura and just kind of going into it?
Yeah, I think the most beneficial thing would be just in general to describe the manifestor. And I always like to bring in the lack of informing that creates problems in the relationship. And also talking about like the ego, splenic, or emotional authority and how that relates differently. And in my understanding, and Danielle, help me understand this, is that we're all waiting. We're all waiting on something. And all but one type of manifestor is also waiting. And so I think that's the part I want to get into, because I think when we first start seeing our charts, and it's like, oh man, we're always looking for the short end of the stick, right? Oh, you got to wait for an invitation. You got to wait to respond. We all have to wait because we've all been conditioned. So that's where I would like to go with it.
Yeah. Okay, and it's interesting too, you know, with Rob being a manifestor, and like I said, they're about 8 to 10% of the population. We can really start by discussing like a manifestor child, or what happens when a manifestor comes into the world, and why they're so different. So if you're a manifestor, when you come into the world, you know, you're met by all of these enveloping auras, mostly generators, some projectors, maybe a reflector. Your parents were probably not manifestors. Okay. So immediately the auras of other people around you might feel uneasy, right? They might feel uncomfortable. The most important thing for a manifestor to understand is that your strategy of informing, which is really about recognizing the concerns of other people, right? To inform them, hey, I'm going to do this, because your aura is not actually communicating that. Your aura is the only aura that is repelling. It pushes people back. So as a child, when you come into the world and your aura is, you know, you feel other people uneasy around you, you don't really know what that means as a child, but you're internalizing this, right? So what happens is you develop the not self strategy of responding or not asking for permission as a child. and there's all these controls put on you, right? So if you have a manifestor child, it's likely that they're not going to follow all the rules, that they might just open the door and go out into the yard and then go beyond the yard. So especially as parents, we have to be really careful with not trying to control the child, because that's where the manifestor gives up. They lose their power. They realize that every time they go to make a step, that they're meeting resistance. So that's why when we tell parents that the mantra for your manifestor child is ask, don't take, right? That should always be instilled in them. You're really instilling politeness and showing them that they have to kind of play this game of including others, being polite to them, telling them what they're doing. And that's really important as a child, because if they don't learn that as children, even Ross says this, that they're almost impossible to save as adults, right? That deconditioning manifestor adults is very difficult. And by the way, if you're a manifestor listening to this, we are not telling you what to do. We are informing you as well. Because just as it's important for you to inform people what you're going to do before you act, before you impact them, it's also important for all of the rest of us, if we know a manifestor, that we don't tell them what to do, right? We want to actually inform them. So as an example, if you're in a relationship with a manifestor, and let's say like your partner is a manifestor, and you need to get your water filter changed on your water filter, you don't ask them. You just simply inform them, hey, the water filter needs to be changed, right? But you're not asking them or telling them what to do. Because the moment that we tell a manifestor what to do or ask them questions, because they're not really meant to be approached in that way, it immediately creates resistance. And this is what alters their chemistry in their body. We've talked about anger and peace being the binary or the duality of the energy signature of the manifestor. And it's really just a chemical process. Manifestors, if you have a lot of anger, you don't want to try to get rid of that. It's just that we don't want to project it out. You really want to learn to transform it into correct action. Rod talks about how there's two energy types, right? We have generators, which are the sacral beings that are here to do work. And then we have manifestors, which are also energy beings. They're the pure doers, the ones that are here to make it happen. And Ra even uses the example of Moses parting the seas, right? So you're here to make it happen. You're here to impact and to move forward despite any fear of rejection. So there's like 3 R's that I think of: rejection, resistance, and resentment, right? So these are things that can come up inside of you, and you really have to be resilient. I guess there's 4 R's, resilient to all of that. From being a child, you're freaking your parents out because you can just go off and do all your own things. So you slowly lose your power from them trying to control you. And then as an adult, if you're not informing, if you have not been made resilient to continue to take the action despite all of that resistance, then now you have no power. So we see a lot of adult manifestors that literally have, they're powerless. They don't know their impact. They don't realize how powerful they are. It's a really sad thing to see. It's really not easy being a manifestor. I'm a generator, so I don't know. My dad's a manifestor. Some of my best friends are manifestors. So I can see a lot in that. But yeah, it's not easy to be so powerful and feel like the whole world is against you, right? So Kim, what are your experiences with manifestors and all that?
It's an interesting dynamic because they are so powerful, and because they can't see their power, they can't even acknowledge and claim their own power. So they're pissed. So it's like this inner knowing that they are powerful and they do have something, but they've been, I don't know if it's through conditioning, but they've kind of been shut down from that natural tendency, right? Because it's not polite and you shouldn't do that and you have to do this. And then all of that wanting to be a good little girl or a good little guy, or, is actually what's creating that dissonance, I would say, is, well, but I'm supposed to, but I was told I can't. And
Right.
I just thought of another R word when you said that, and it's remind. And that's because they're informing. So sometimes you have to remind your partner, hey, don't forget, I'm leaving. Hey, I'm going to the store. Isn't there a funny story about this? There's a couple that were cleaning in the kitchen, and the manifestor was like, they're out of something. Maybe the wife said they're out of something. And so the manifestor just ups and leaves and goes to the store. And then she spends like hours looking for him. And it's because he didn't tell her he was gone.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
that's what we mean by informing. It's just like making others aware. That's informing. But why is it so prominent? Like they skip that step. And I've talked to them about it, so I have 2 clients that are in self-healing masters that are manifestors. And this is one of the questions, because I'm curious. I don't know, just like you said, you don't know. We're generators. We do things differently. And whenever I recognized, I'm thinking of one client in particular, I recognized her power and her message and her, like what she wants to bring to the world. And that conditioning of not having permission, because being in relationships that have shut that down for like over 10 years has created this, I'll say this angst, because she doesn't have permission to do her role, to play her role. And that has created resentment and anger. So that's been my experience. What else? You can, like, I'm thinking of one of the manifestors when we're in e-school, when we're in the group, and she's like itching to talk, like she wants to share, she has something to say. And it's like, you can see this going on. And so I think that's interesting, that how it, it almost comes off looking like an impatience.
Oh yeah.
Because yeah. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, my dad's an emotional manifestor, one of my good friends, she's a splenic manifestor. I've worked with lots of different manifestors, ego manifestors, ego splenic manifestors.
Can we discuss that? Like, can we talk about those 3 types? Because I know the 2 that are in self-healing masters are brand new to human design. And I haven't really talked to anyone who is a manifestor who's specifically said, like, I am a splenic manifestor, I am an ego manifestor, I'm an emotional manifestor, and I do things differently. But I think it's important to point that out. So let's start with the ego manifestor and just tell a little bit about how they.
Yeah. So ego manifestors, it's pretty interesting because the ego, like we know, is the heart or the willpower. It's there can be a direct connection of ego from the 2145, because a manifesting channel is a motor connected directly to the throat. So that one can be pretty interesting if it's connected that way, because that channel is very difficult to have in a chart. Ross says that it is one of the channels that's meant to be an electromagnetic connection, meaning one person has one part, someone else has the other one. So this one can be particularly difficult because the ego, especially when it's connected this way as a manifestor, is all about what's in it for me. We've talked about this strategy of informing, which is more of a way to help dealing with other people. Right. Whereas the other types, they have strategies of how to kind of drive their life and listen to their authority. For a manifestor, the strategy is about eliminating resistance. So the authority part is really what drives you. And one of the things when manifestors don't listen to their authority, they go into the mind and they start thinking of all the steps to get there. So if your ego manifested, you're not here to think of all of the, potentials down the line, which would maybe prevent you from taking the steps. But it's really about informing people of what you have to do or what you don't have. It's all about possession. And again, knowing that people may be uncomfortable with you, they might think that you're just here taking whatever you can take, even though that's part of your design, but then that's in order to distribute and to help others. Because as a manifestor, it's all about getting your allies, right? You're super powerful, but you're not exclusive, right? You're meant to be inclusive. So just remember that. The splenic manifestor is really about making the decisions in the now, but not acting right away, because you have to inform, right? So in the now what your gut is saying. You might not know why, it might not make a lot of sense. You have to listen to it, even if you feel paranoid, and communicates the other people before you take the action. Sometimes it may be fear-based because the spleen is about survival fear, and your spleen A lot of times won't make sense, but you need to follow it anyways. It's there protecting you for your survival and your health. And then the emotional manifester has to wait over time. So they might feel something with their authority, with their awareness about what they want to initiate, what they want to do, but they have to use the wave to decide who they're going to impact. So for all of the manifestors, before you take your action, no matter what your authority is telling you, you have to think about what would happen if you took the action and didn't inform people, because there's always going to be consequences and like literal punishment. Your reputation is at risk. People will be afraid of you. You'll lose support, lose allies, and then you'll be pushing against the river, not like Moses parting the sea with a whole army of people. So with the emotional clarity, which is not the mind, right? It's all about waiting over time. During the wave of the ups and downs, your nervousness, your chemical process is going to show you, okay, I need to inform this person and that person and that person, because you have to think about it. Pretty much all the rest of the people that you're dealing with, well, most of them are going to be generators. Each manifestor is designed to handle about 8 to 9 generators. And then plus you might have 1 reflector, maybe 1 or 2 projectors. So you're giving everyone a chance to respond, and people will start to treat you with respect. And pretty much immediately, as soon as you start using your strategy of informing people, your whole reputation can change, and people aren't fearing that you're out of control or impatient, or that you're going to do things and you're not going to let us know. So a lot of times when I'm doing readings for manifestors, I use the analogy of like being a train conductor, and that your role is being this train conductor, looking at the windshield, and you're seeing who's on the tracks and where the train needs to go. You have your projectors managing the generators that might be like doing the work, shoveling the coal, taking care of the train. But it's really all about getting people to jump on board with you or tell them to move out of the way. If you're an adult and you don't live with your parents, you don't have to ask anyone for permission. All I would say about this is that the most important thing is that when you fear rejection or resistance, especially then, you have to tell people what's going on. Otherwise, like I said, you're going to get punishment and consequences, and that anger is just going to keep brewing, and it's going to destroy whatever it is you're trying to work on.
That's a great point, is when you're feeling that angst, like when you're feeling that from others, is just to pause.
Yeah.
And then just bring, how can I say this? Because it's like, I think to them, and I can kind of relate to this in my own life, it's like we think they already know, or like, because it's like a not being mindful or being aware of that little step. Like, it's not intentional. Like, I'm just not going to tell you anything. It's actually like you're just moving on and forgetting to do that part. My team tells me I do this all the time. I'll give them like the end game, but there's no context because I haven't informed them of what was happening prior to. And
right.
So I'm just curious if that would be a way that that they can relate to what's happening from the other side, from the other person's perspective. It's like, well, I didn't know. And then there's this angst in the relationship, right? Yeah. That comes up. So when you can sense it and feel it, is to take care of that and just get into the habit of just letting people know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you're hesitant about informing, or like, oh, they don't really need to know that. Or, if you're not transparent, like be overly transparent, and literally you will notice that people will cheer you on. They'll respect you. Like, hell yeah. Like, I'm going to support you. Even if you didn't think maybe they needed to know all of that stuff. It's really annoying for the manifestor. Like, I know that you don't want to do this because it's like annoying. It's like, why do I have to deal with all these freaking people, but you need people to help you build what you're doing, because you're not the builder. Right? Like, you need these generators, you need these people that will really jump on your train and make the, whatever it is that you're initiating into the life.
So we can all work together.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, we're so darn conditioned to try to be like everyone else and not recognize that we're all playing a different role. Yeah. And there's some pieces being eliminated from the puzzle because of that, instead of it just flowing together and relationships being deeper, which leads us to, if they don't do that, like, let's talk about the energy burnout.
So if they don't do what? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let's talk about how they burn out if they're not aware and they're trying to be the builder, be the person who's doing and in the action themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, manifestors are conditioned to be generators, right? Which is the worker. And you're not here to do that, right? You're here to guide and to initiate guiding us into something new, right? But yeah, if you take in these sacral energies of others, which is very common, you're amplifying that energy, and then you become what Ra calls the super slave, and you're just working away. And this is what he even says kind of kills the manifestor. I guess could be literal, but he kind of refers to it as eating them alive. So yeah, you have to be really careful with who you're around. And any non-sacral types, so projectors, reflectors, or manifestors, so this applies to all of you, you have to know when to exit the aura of a generator or other people. So especially for manifestors, you come in, you inform, you give people a chance to respond to something. You're not asking for permission. You're including them. You're saying, hey, this is happening. Do you want to do this, right? Or not? And then you need to leave the aura, and especially like sleeping alone is very important. And going to bed, like going into your room before you're tired as well, to help you kind of recharge and wind down. Otherwise, you can just be working all the time, and your reproductive organs, many biological functions can be disrupted from this, but especially like those reproductive organs, because that's the sacral. That could be a point where, I've seen that happen with manifestors, especially. But yeah, just know that if you inform, people won't feel the need to control you. If you start to see that people are actually just afraid of you because they don't know what you're going to do, right? So then what we do is we go, I don't know if I can work with them. I don't know if I want to do anything like that with them because they're unpredictable. So you have to show people and literally like prove it to them that you are reliable, that you're predictable, that you will at least inform them of what you're going to do, even if it changes. Like my really good friend who is a splenic manifestor, I'm totally cool with her if she's like, oh, changing the plans, or I'm doing this, like, you're free to do what you want. I want to support you. Just tell me what's happening, right? So just really practice with that. And if you're feeling anger or someone else is angry with you, it's probably more than likely because you didn't tell them and you took an action that impacted them. Then when you start to see this, you start to see how powerful you are and how much impact you actually have. And then you have awareness. Then you've transformed the not self manifestorness and are now able to continue to move forward, gathering your allies. A lot of times manifestors think that they can do everything on their own. Because they don't want to be controlled, so they just try to do everything on their own, and they're jumping around or trying to get these allies. And then, it's chaotic and it's not really working, right? So collect your allies, and people will really, really honor you and respect you. And we need you to be in that alignment so that we have something to respond to. Like, it's really important.
And then allowing them to be in their power, which is going to make them so much more proficient in their role.
Right.
And this is great advice for any of us who want better relationships. Like,
True.
I think we can all learn from this. I know myself in particular of, I don't love all those little details. I just trust life, and I assume everyone else does too. And that we're just going to figure it out as we go. And then I come across like being in relationship with these 3 5s and 5 1s, and they want all these little details, and they want to know, and they want to see it, and they want the outline, and they want the workbook, and and I'm just like, so hard for, like, from my perspective. I don't want to get into all of the lines in this particular call because we're really talking about the manifestor, but I think the information that's coming through can relate to all of us relating better to other people. Is if we really just slow the heck down, quit trying to make things happen, and just really follow our strategy and authority, and tap into some patience, man. And I'm talking to myself.
Right.
It's the impatience that creates so much suffering because we see it or we desire it and we've been taught to go and make it happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, especially for emotional beings too, that can be something, I've been like grocery shopping with an emotional manifestor. I'm a state world generator. So I'm open to the emotional energy and especially the manifestor energy. And like, for me, I just noticed that I wasn't able to like really take my time like I normally would in the store. Right. I'm just like kind of rushing around. I'm like, oh, like I can't do that again, but it's just really interesting for any of the types. We have to trust the process and not try to rush through everything. But yeah, if you're a manifestor, I hope that this really sinks in and that, we're just informing you of how the other types might be feeling. So you have awareness. And Ra even talks about how like you're able to fool people, and he doesn't mean it in a way that's negative. It's like, if you play the game of, public relations and like just being courteous and being that person, the train conductor, it's like, all right, guys, the train's about to move. Let's go. That like people will really, really support you. And that's what you need. So you're not living that life of just like feeling very alone because your aura is not enveloping, right? I've heard from manifestors that they don't feel like they're really like taken in. And that's because of the aura, right? Like your aura operates differently. So yeah, getting the right allies is going to be really helpful for whatever it is you're trying to do. But notice where there's peace and then where there's anger. And the more peace that you have, it's all coming from telling people what you're doing. You will just create more and more peace. And Ra talks about how the manifestors are the only type that have two strategies. So you have one as a child, which is ask for permission. But then as soon as the child leaves the house, that now they just have to inform. You don't have to ask permission. So given what we've talked about today, if you're a manifestor, now you have awareness, you can communicate to the people in this way. You could even be like, hey, maybe in the past, you may have felt that you couldn't trust me. And so I'm going to try to tell you more about what I'm doing. And please, like, you can't control me, right? Don't try to control me. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I'll let you know. And I'll give you a chance to respond to it. But yeah, you just need to start communicating, showing people how to treat you, I'm
like, just try that for a week and let us know. You can come and comment below or come to the More Than Mindset Facebook group. Danielle and I are both there. You can tag us and even comment below this actual video that's in there. And I think what's the main thing is to practice doing it differently.
Yeah.
And do your own investigating, your own experimenting by just trying it. I mean, what do you have to lose? Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you'll probably surprise yourself and you'll be surprised how people respond to you. And one of the things I really like to do as well, like if you're a manifestor and you know what channels you have, or what gates in the throat you have, you can really work on your communication and things like that, which will be really helpful as well. But yeah, definitely if you have any questions, reach out in the groups or under the video and let us know.
And I think we're both like pretty honest about, we have no idea what it's like to be a manifestor because we're not manifestors, although we do know manifestors and see their struggles and what they're talking to us about, and just to be able to give you some input or maybe something that you weren't sure about, like being this influencer, being this informer, or just playing your role, trying it out, kind of drop that urgency or the self-judgment, about not being able to see your own power or even being ashamed of your own power. Because I think that's what comes up is like there's shame in it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. We talk about like the courage of the manifestor because we talked about the R's, I guess there's 4, right? So the resistance, and that when you start to move the train, that people are going to try to stop you, or they're going to be whatever, some people. So it's really about the courage of being able to take the step, even though you don't know exactly where the train is going, or you don't know if people are going to jump on the train. Don't wait for support of others, still tell them. But if they don't jump on the train, you have to keep going And yeah, all of that is rooted in self-worth, which, like we talked about, stems back to being a child manifester and all of that conditioning that you've had to deal with as a child coming into the world, and not being shown your power and having it be controlled and all of that. So it is definitely possible to get back into your alignment, and you can start right away.
Right away. Okay, that's what we have for you this week. And this ends the final phase of just talking about this part of it. So we're going to move into just some regular shows, and maybe Danielle and I come on and have conversations about communication. That's what we've been doing a lot of on the YouTube channel. And then we will pick up with some more human design stuff. So we just want to weave it in, give you a little bit of information, and then dodge out, because I recognize that so many people go in the rabbit hole and then they forget doing their own inner work. So we want to try to find the balance between the two, give you information, give you enough time to go and integrate it, try it out, see how it works for you, gather information. That's all it is just information. And maybe, finding a new way to relate to people that's going to feel more satisfying, and that's helpful. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add before we hop off?
That's it. We'll see you guys on the next show. And make sure you reach out to us. Let us know what you think, or if you have questions. And it's just really fun sharing all this information, and hope it helps you guys.
Yep. If you want a private reading, we'll have a link below that you can get. You can book that with Danielle. If you want to come into Self-Healing Masters and discover and live your design, then the link will also be below. That's it.